Just a quick note, I am exploring my own relationship with food, eating, and dieting in this video. If you are facing personal challenges or need medical or nutritional advice, please consult a healthcare professional. It is the middle of the day, and I haven't had a proper meal yet. I know that's not good, but what ends up happening is I overthink every single one of my meals because I want them to be delicious and perfect, but when mealtime actually comes around, I end up being super unprepared, so I'll either, one, skip meals, which is physically exhausting, or I'll end up ordering takeout, which is financially exhausting. And I can't afford to keep doing this. So to figure it out, I ate according to the National Food Guide, looked into the history of how it was made, and finally fixed my eating habits.
How are you making certain food choices? How do you determine what's enough?
Thank you to Trainwell for sponsoring a portion of today's video, and to our patrons for supporting the channel. I'm trying to figure out how to eat more regularly and healthfully. And I know I can't trust myself to plan my meals every single day because I'm too lazy to do that. So what I need is some sort of loose guideline to help me figure out which foods I should be buying so that I could figure it out from there. Luckily, the government literally makes that for me. This is the Canadian Food Guide from 2007. According to it, every day I should be eating 7 to 8 servings of fruits and veggies, 6 to 7 servings of grain products, 2 servings of milk and alternatives, and 2 servings of meat and alternatives. I know this one's old, but it's what I remember being taught as a kid. In the 4th grade, we had this assignment where we needed to track all of the foods we ate for a week and share it with the class. It was supposed to help us build healthy eating habits, but instead I think it scarred me more than it helped me. I remember being 8 years old and stressed out trying to remember every Chewy bar that I ate that week. But I was a child then, and now I'm an adult, so I think it'll be better. I will admit, as I was filling my shopping cart, it did occur to me that this is going to be a lot of food to consume in 1 week, but let's just go for it. Starting the day off strong with a stocked fridge, I made myself a granola and yogurt bowl, but quickly realized that my yogurt was in fact expired. So I gave up and went out to get a latte and a croissant. I am counting this as a serving of dairy and grains. Now, since it was the weekend, I decided to be a little more ambitious with my lunch. Can't believe I bought this gigantic bag of spinach. I didn't realize that it was this big when I picked it up. I was like, oh yeah, this is normal. And then I tried to put it in my fridge. And it ended up being worth the wait because it was very delicious. Proportion-wise, I think I got this down. I really don't know if I can eat all these noodles. This is just so much noodle. When dinner time rolled around, I didn't feel hungry for the meal that I originally planned, so I just ended up eating instant ramen. In an attempt to redeem myself, I made myself a generous breakfast. I've been trying to get 2 servings of grains at every meal because I need like 6 to 7 every single day. This is a lot of bread to be eating this early in the morning. I can't finish it. I'm sorry. It was around 4 o'clock that I realized that I hadn't eaten lunch yet. Honestly, I was still so full from breakfast, but I knew that I needed to eat something for lunch if I wanted to meet my serving requirements for the day. Making this lunch took more effort than I thought, but it was so delicious and I am glad that I ate. Because I ate so late, I thought I'd get by the rest of the night with a little sweet treat, but around 11 p.m. I was taken over by hunger and I knew that I needed to eat something before going to bed. A big reason that I'm doing this in the first place is to have more energy throughout my day. Yes, saving money on takeout, cooking more, and getting my work done is part of this, but a bigger motivation is that I have a dog now, and she requires a lot of my energy. I love her, she's the sweetest dog ever. She also happens to be a small chunk. I want to be able to keep up with her puppy energy and also be able to pick her up in case anything happens. I know that being healthy is part diet, but also part exercise, so I started to work out with the help of Trainwell. In the past, working out involved a lot of winging it for the most part. From trying workout classes to influencer bodybuilding programs, I've never felt the motivation to stay consistent or had the feeling like I was doing the right thing. So when Trainwell came knocking, I was intrigued because I'd never worked with a personal trainer one-on-one. And here's how it went. First, I got matched with a virtual trainer after doing a quiz. And yes, this is a real person.
It's nice to meet you.
Who worked with me to understand my goals and develop a custom routine for me that worked with my schedule and what I have. For me, that was wanting to work out 3 times a week for no more than 45 minutes a session and be able to do them at home with 2 10-pound weights and a workout mat. It's all done through this app where you can access your workouts, chat with your trainer, and track your progress. Your workouts are continuously adapted and are designed to make you enjoy working out. I realized a lot of the classes and programs that I was doing were probably fine, but they weren't modified for my current abilities. So when it came to strength training, we went at my own pace and worked up to lifting heavier over the course of 9 weeks. We started with a full body routine, then tried a Pilates vibe routine, which is what I was used to, and currently I'm working on the second iteration of a more conditioning style workout routine. Strength training with Trainwell has made me appreciate the value of taking my time and just showing up rather than worrying about having everything being perfect. The weekly motivational messages from Olivia also really helped. I remember the exact moment I was able to do a full push-up, not modified, mid-routine, and I giddily messaged my trainer to share my big win. I can confidently say that Trainwell has made me want to work out, and I feel better. And I'm really excited to continue. So if you're interested in trying Trainwell out for yourself, the first 100 people to sign up using my Trainwell link will get 14 days free plus $25 off your first month. Okay, I'm hungry now. By day 3, I started to notice that I have been eating and cooking more, but I was still struggling to hit all the servings in each food group every day. I thought maybe I wasn't used to eating this much, or maybe I was eating the wrong things, but I do know that eating like this wasn't making me feel good. I thought that it was going to be the 2 servings of dairy every single day that was going to get me, but it was actually the sheer amount of bread and grains it was suggesting me to have every single day. It's just a little bit too much right now. So I decided to take a break from eating according to the food guide to see what else was out there. I remember hearing about intuitive eating a while ago, which is an approach to eating that focuses on listening to your body to tell you what you need. So I was curious to see if that might solve my problem. And while reading the book, I came across an intuitive eating assessment. So let's take the assessment together. I try to avoid certain foods high in fat, carbs, or calories. I'm gonna say no. I follow eating rules or diet plans that dictate what, when, and or how to eat. Again, no, I think this is mostly just me eating off of vibes. Okay, question 6 is I trust my body to tell me when to stop eating. I feel like actually no for that question. After taking the intuitive eating assessment, I was really surprised to learn that I actually don't have great intuition when it comes to eating. Specifically in one section I scored low in was the section on emotional eating, and it made me realize that oftentimes I choose to eat for emotional reasons rather than for physical nourishment. Yes, I can tell when I'm hungry. Whether I act on it is a different story. Taking this assessment made me realize that intuitive eating probably isn't the best solution for me right now because it's too loose of a structure and I can't trust myself to eat strictly off of vibes. But at the same time, the 2007 food guide was just way too rigid. Still looking for some guidance, I returned to the food guide. And turns out even the food guide recognizes that it has a problem because they came out with a new shiny version in 2019 that looks very different. We use a plate here instead of a rainbow. But something else that I noticed, apart from booting dairy off the food guide, is a significant reduction in the amount of grains. To understand how the food guide got to this point, I went to the library and dove into the history of the food guide dating all the way back to 1942. We can see just how much it's changed over the years, but let's take a look at the different factors that forced it to evolve. Well, 1942 marks Canada's first official food rules, and it outlined the minimum daily food requirements for the average adult. During wartime, the government needed healthy, working-class people and recognized that having a well-nourished population would help with that. So they set out these food rules to ensure a healthy, but more importantly, able working class of people. Fast forward to 1961, Canada replaces the use of the word food rules with food guide and expanded the food groups to be more comprehensive. But truthfully, not much actually changed, other than reducing the emphasis on liver. However, by 1977, our knowledge of nutrition had greatly improved to follow through on that 1961 goal of making food groups more inclusive. Instead of just meat, we had meat and alternatives. Instead of bread and cereal, we had grains. This knowledge became the foundation of the modern food guide, and it largely came from 2 major studies. One, a massive survey conducted across the country that helped inform this iteration, but also, it came from these malnourishment experiments on Indigenous children in the 1940s and 50s. These experiments took place at Canada's residential schools, an institution that took Indigenous children from their homes in an attempt to assimilate them into Canadian society. Here, children's access to food was limited, so as an experiment, they used some of the children as a control group to create a baseline for what malnourishment looks like. Yes, this means that the Canadian government intentionally starved Indigenous children for the sake of an experiment. Up until now, the food guide was a document that was used to help prevent poor health rather than achieve optimal health. But that started to shift in 1992, where the recommendations took a more total diet approach versus the minimum diet approach of the past. And it finally recognized people's varying energy needs. There weren't any fundamental changes to the 2007 version, but it was the first to recognize milk and alternatives. Which brings us here, 2019, a food guide with no dairy, no strict serving suggestions, and a significant reduction in the amount of grains. I think this is the biggest and, might I say, best evolution of the food guide for a couple of reasons. Having a plate and ratios of each food group is so much easier to understand than this. And two, our understanding of nutrition has really improved over the past 100 years. If we look at all the different food groups, we have fruits and vegetables being the largest one. And then we have just a section on proteins, not specific to meat, beans, or fish, or dairy even. And the grain section has gotten so much smaller because of the emphasis on whole grains and more nutrient-dense grains versus so many slices of bread. But the last thing that I think is the biggest shift in this food guide is the reduction of industry lobbying. This has been confirmed by this paper published by the Canadian government that says there is evidence that the biofood industry interferes with the development of public food policies worldwide through corporate political activity. And more specifically, when the 2019 version of the food guide was being developed, there is evidence that the biofood industry was against the food guide's recommendations to limit processed foods and favor plant-based foods. I don't know about you, but this seems like a big win for the public, and specifically for me, because this means that I don't need to eat an entire loaf of bread in a single day. I don't know, I look at this food guide and I feel really hopeful that it might be the right thing for me. But if I am being honest with myself, I haven't been the best judge of my own eating habits in the past, so to be sure, I'm going to talk to a registered dietitian.
My name is Nataly. I'm a registered dietitian for JM Nutrition, a private practice company. I provide nutrition counseling services.
What is the first step that you take when you are designing something for somebody?
I will say first and foremost, a meal plan is not for everybody. Based on their history, if I feel like the meal plan might just be another type of diet that they feel they have to follow strictly to a T, and if they don't, they might feel as though they've failed. That's never the intention. The meal plan is not meant to be this long-term thing that you follow for the rest of your life, but it's more so meant just to provide the foundation. Generally speaking, the meals should contain, vegetables or maybe fruit, some type of protein, some type of complex carbohydrate that's high in fiber, ideally, and then a sort of fat. I tend to often ask for their input in the meal plan too. I can certainly give suggestions and advice, but we want to keep in mind what they're currently doing and can we sort of expand on that. There tends to be so much unknown food rigidity or just restrictive food beliefs or food rules that a lot of the times people don't necessarily realize are actually rooted in disordered eating, especially in diet culture. The idea of cheat days, where a person will omit a certain food from their diet and then save up, quote unquote, for their Saturday or whatever day of the week. You're creating the perfect scenario for binging. Once that binge or even just overeating ends up happening, a person will usually be filled with a lot of shame and guilt and negative self-talk, and then it's like a cycle because they just omit that food again, but they're just setting themselves up for another binge all over again.
What would be your recommendations, like the first couple of steps that you would advise somebody to try to build a healthy relationship with food?
This might sound incredibly basic, but aiming to eat 3 meals a day and have snacks in between the meals. Oftentimes when I mention to people eating 3 meals a day, snacks in between, they might say to me, but Nataly, I'm not actually hungry for breakfast, or I'm not actually hungry at whatever time. At that point, we want to do more what's called mechanical eating. Just because I can't pick up on hunger cues doesn't mean my body magically doesn't need that energy. It still does, but that hunger cue was ignored for so long that the body adapted. A meal gets skipped, and then, later on in the day, a person has to compensate by eating more. Even if you don't feel physically hungry for that meal, the more consistent you are with having it, those hunger cues can return. And I see that all the time with clients. Once it becomes more, habitual, then we can sort of look into the more specific food beliefs. How are you making certain food choices? How do you determine what's enough? What food groups or what foods are you incorporating? What are you not incorporating? And why is that? I think the biggest takeaway from my work with clients, regardless of where they're at with their relationship with food, is having food choices be guided by internal cues as opposed to external cues. How does my body feel when I incorporate these foods? I probably have more energy, maybe I have better mental health, maybe I'm sleeping better. And so that can be a really great internal motivator to keep on taking part in those behaviors.
When I was younger, food and cooking were really a form of escape. But when I moved out and I needed to cook every meal for myself, cooking became labor. And you gotta do it even when you're tired. And while I still believe that food can be romantic, sometimes a girl's just gotta eat. While I don't think that a strict meal plan works for me, I will be using the new food guide as a reference to build my weekly grocery lists so that I can get into the habit of cooking more frequently. I don't think that I've completely fixed my energy issue, but I think that I have started to heal my relationship with food that I honestly didn't know needed mending. I'm really grateful that I could chat with Nataly and clear up some big questions that I had. If you're interested in listening to our full conversation, you can find it in our newsletter page. And lastly, thank you again to Trainwell for helping me keep active. You can find out more about both of them in the video description.